Welcome back, everyone. We are talking about the CSS box model, and I left out one key element of the box model, and that is border. So we're going to go to our div where we're styling the border, and I want to show you the options that you have available in border. And notice right away you see the first one, border top, and I just want to point out that we have border top, border right, border bottom, border left. So we don't have to only do one border. So border top, let me show you the several main things that you can style here are color, style, width. We'll talk radius later, if there's time. So we're going to do color, and of course we can give color codes like blue, for example. Or we could give hexadecimal like 336699. Or we could give RGB or HSLA or whatever. There's just a lot of different color schemes that we can use. And then we'll do border top, and then this time we'll do width. And we can use keywords like you see here, medium, thin, thick. We can also give it a value. And I like to give it value. So let's give it a 5 pixel. And then finally, we'll do border top, and we're going to do style. And there's a lot of different styles. In the case, if you're only going to do one border, you might want to avoid some of these. And we'll go into each of these in a little bit later. But I just want to start right off the bat with just border top. I'm going to hit refresh, and right away you can see a top border. This is kind of nice. I mean, so you can do a lot of interesting styles. You can make your headers this way. You could put the border on the bottom. So you could swap out top for bottom. And I'm just going to copy that and do it that way. And save our changes. Hit refresh. Bam, now we got the border on the bottom. So there's a lot of things we can do to style this on individual borders. Then we can style the others. The other thing, though, we can do is a shorthand. And the shorthand, we just can do border bottom, which is kind of hard to say. Okay, for me it is. And watch what happens. We're just going to do border bottom. We're going to use all three of the measurements, and we're going to hit refresh. And now it's on the bottom. It is basically, we have that bottom border. It matches all the styles, and we did it all with one shorthand. Of course, we can take the dash bottom off. That sounds funny. And we can save our changes and hit refresh, and there we go. Okay, so as you can see, we can just do it shorthand like this. I did want to talk about the different styles there are. So one thing you can do is, I'm really curious if this is going to work. I'm not entirely sure this is going to work. I'm going to leave out the style because I want to keep that separate. So I want to go back down to where it says border style. And now I want to just go through some of the different values. I'm going to go ahead and set one here, save my changes, and hit refresh. Okay, so there's inset. And let's go ahead and make the thickness much thicker so we can see exaggerated view of what's going on with that. There, so that's inset. So I'm going to change some of the styles here. So there's dashed. That's what it looks like dashed. It's a little bit on the big side, wouldn't you say? So let's take the border thickness down a notch. A little bit better. Let's go all the way down to 10. Yeah, it's a lot better. Okay, so that's dashed. Here's dotted. They're not, yeah, they're dots. I mean, they're squares. We got double, so we can do a double line. Groove, where it's kind of like you got an outer, inner kind of thing going there. It's supposed to be as if it's like kind of raised up, hidden. Of course, we can hide it. Inherent just means whatever the parent has, do the same thing. Initial, similar. Inset, it looks like it's inset, like the box itself is down and we're looking into the box. Outset is supposed to look as if we're looking at the top of the box somewhat, which is kind of strange. You wouldn't see that, but you know, hey. That's outset, and then finally we have, oh, I gotta delete that. Hit refresh. There we go. Okay, there we go. Ridge, that was the other one, and then of course you already saw solid. So a lot of these are very similar. So I'm gonna leave it at solid, I think. I'm going to leave it at solid. 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 I'm going Okay. However, you can play around with some of this stuff. And watch this. You could do a border right color, and you can now swap out the color. So let's try cornflower blue, or we could try crimson, or we could try gray. So you can do a lot of different things there by changing certain border individual colors. There's endless variations that you can play around with. I'm not going to go into all of those, but I just wanted to show you a little bit of what's going on with that. So this is kind of like overriding kind of like what's existing, and you can do a border left, and you can do the same thing where border left color. Actually, you can do it this way, border. I believe you can also do the color. Oh, okay, so apparently you do need to add the dash color. Add a dash of color. And so you can play around with this. And of course, if the border, and notice what we did. We just did one border here, and we set the style and the color, and then we added the style separately. I did that more so I could see what I had available. So I think I'd probably go back here and change this back to where it was before. But you can see how we can play around with the different colors on here. So we're just going to go back to solid. And the last thing I want to show you, and I was hoping I'd have time, is a thing called border radius. Also, before I do that, let's get rid of that and go back to, this is usually the most common way to do borders, like so. And the last one is border radius. The border radius creates rounded corners, and let's do a 20 pixel border radius. Save our changes, hit refresh, and you can see it's a rounded corner. Let's also scale back the border width. Let's make this, instead, let's make this 8. I hit 8 on accident, but that'll work. A little bit easier to see. We can also set the height. I showed you the width. We might as well set the height. In here, instead of setting the height, we should probably set what's called the min height. And the reason why we're setting the min height is we don't want to make it like smaller than the text that fits inside. So I'm going to give it a 5 EM here. Let's see what happens there. All right, it's a little bit wider. Okay, the reason why I'm doing this is not so much because I want that text there, but I want to have these I want to show you the rounded corners and what's going on with that. So border radius, if you give it 20, what we're saying basically here is from the top corner here, if you're to go out about 20 pixels to the right and 20 pixels down, you do an even curve rotated that way. Or you could also view it basically the radius of the circle, and this is just like 1/4 of the circle. The radius of that circle is 20 pixels. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? Didn't have to do that. But watch what happens if I give it 20 pixels and I give it a 0. Now, what we're doing here is the same thing we did before as a shorthand. Now, in the case of border radius, because we're looking at the border corners, we actually start at the top left corner. And let's go back and we'll do 20 pixels and we'll do 0 like so. And when I hit refresh, you'll see that there it's no rounding, and there's no rounding. And to prove it, I will change this to 20 px to show that it is clockwise still, but now it's clockwise starting at the left, top right, bottom left, still going clockwise. Okay, and so we can play around with these values here. But that's not the only thing we can do. If we put a little slash here, and let's give it, oh, I don't know, 10 pixels. Save our changes. Let's see what happens. And let's make it a little more exaggerated. Let's give it 50 pixels and 30 pixels. Save our changes. Now what's happening here is our rounded corners are not quite as rounded as normal. So what we're doing here is the first 50 pixels is along the horizontal axis away from the corner. So horizontally along the x-axis, we're going out 50 pixels. So from here to here is 50 pixels. From here down to here is 30 pixels. So it actually stretches out more horizontally than it does vertically. We could swap those numbers and have it basically do the same thing. going the opposite way, 30 pixels, 50 pixels, and now it's done that way. So you can play around with this border radius, and you can even do this, where we do a mix and match. And I think what we have to do here, let's see if I'm right. We'll do a 0. Yeah, I am right. Okay, notice what happens. That 0 forces it. If anything's 0, it cannot be rounded at all. And so if I do 10 pixel like so, and I did 50 and then 10 pixels, let's make it 20. And 20, you see what's going on here. I mean, we could do some really odd shapes just playing around with the border radius alone, giving it different values. And so the point here is these are the values along the x-axis, and these are the values along the y-axis. In other words, vertically, x is horizontal, y is vertical, separated with a slash. And we can do each one differently. So you can play around it. I would go into detail more, but I think that's given you plenty to deal with. Okay, so this is where I'm going to leave you. I'm going to leave you here. I'm not giving you all the answers. I'm not telling you how to do everything, but at least at this point, you can see how this border radius can do very interesting effects. If you're interested in more about the border, I do have a video tutorial on using what's called border image. And that requires skills even more complex than what I just showed you on border radius. But I do have a whole video on it. It may even be 2 videos on that. I'll link to it on my video. And you also might want to take a look at some of my layout tutorials. I think the next step for you to learn would be the float. And if I don't have a video on that, I will be adding one soon. So be on the lookout for it. Maybe it's already there. Thank you.